Another riot in their eastern hemisphere. Primitive weapons. 37 casualties. Commander Xerex sighed, adding the incident to his daily report. A brilliant sunset over Jupiter's massive form filled the viewport of his office aboard the Imperial classification station, but the view had long lost its appeal. For millennia, the Talaxian Imperium had classified planets throughout the galaxy with clinical precision. Earth, with its chaotic patchwork of nation-states and environmental damage, was cataloged as a Class 4 inconsequential world, not even worth the resources required to subjugate it. The massive classification station orbiting Europa maintained minimal surveillance, while station personnel dreamed of reassignment to more prestigious systems. Xerex winced as his career assessment pinged on his neural interface. Advancement probability. 12.4% declining. 3 stellar cycles wasted watching these hairless primates wage wars over imaginary borders and invisible deities. The Imperium's probability engines had calculated a mere 0.002% chance that humans would achieve interstellar capability within 5 centuries, the lowest rating of any oxygen-breathing species yet documented. "Sir," his adjutant interrupted, "unusual energy spike detected from their northern continental mass. Signature suggests early-stage particle acceleration experiments." Xerex flicked through the data with practiced boredom. Increased surveillance radius by 0.4 units. Standard procedure. First contact protocol for inconsequential worlds was clear. Absolute non-interference until they either developed FTL travel or achieved planetary unification. Neither seemed remotely likely for these fractious creatures. He composed his weekly assessment for Imperial Central. Sol 3 continues to exhibit political fragmentation and resource inefficiency. Their primitive information networks remain cluttered with entertainment content rather than scientific advancement. Recommend continued minimal observation protocols. The station AI verified his report, appending the standard recommendation for Class 4 worlds. Projected timeline for potential reassessment: 300 to 500 standard years. Xerex stretched his elongated limbs and gazed dispassionately at the blue-green planet. How pitiful that they didn't even know they were being watched, classified, and dismissed by a galactic civilization that could obliterate them with the simplest of technologies. He almost felt sorry for them, trapped in their ignorance while greater species traveled between the stars. What Xerex missed, as he returned to composing his transfer request, was the true purpose of that energy spike, a deliberate signal directed precisely at Europa. In a hardened facility beneath the Arctic ice, Dr. Eliza Sharma smiled as the confirmation appeared on her screen. The Talaxians had taken the bait. They adjusted their scan patterns exactly as predicted, she informed the shadowy figures on her monitor. Project Icarus is confirmed. Their technology is as predictable as their behavior. Behind her, a chamber hummed with reverse-engineered Talaxian technology, pieced together from decades of methodical observation, each component built to appear far less advanced than it actually was. Engineers worked silently, assembling devices whose principles would have shocked Commander Xerex had he known of their existence. Phase 2 can commence, authorized the central figure on the screen. Timeline for full implementation: 3 years, Sharma replied confidently. Their observation patterns are fixed. They only look where they expect to see primitives. As the connection ended, Sharma turned to the quantum entanglement device that would soon reshape the balance of power in the solar system. The Talaxians had made a fundamental error. They had observed human conflict and mistaken it for weakness, watched human entertainment and mistaken it for frivolity, monitored human politics and mistaken it for permanent disunity. They had failed to understand the most dangerous quality of humans. When threatened by something beyond their planetary squabbles, they became something else entirely. The game wasn't about to change. It already had. Impossible. The word echoed through the vaulted chamber of the Talaxian Grand Senate as holographic displays flashed crimson emergency codes. High Chancellor Meritrix gripped the podium with all 4 hands, translucent skin paling to alabaster. Verify again. The central Imperial hub, their most advanced communication nexus connecting over 2,000 star systems, had gone completely silent, not degraded, not malfunctioning. Silent, the technological marvel that had never experienced so much as a power fluctuation in 3 millennia of operation, had simply stopped. 3 battle fleets have ceased communication after reaching the hub's coordinates, reported Admiral Klovex, her voice wavering. Last transmission fragments suggest they encountered nothing. No debris. No radiation signature. The hub is physically gone. Panic spread through the Imperium's ruling classes. Senate members demanded explanations, military resources, protection for their home systems. Nothing like this had happened in their 40,000-year dominance of the Galactic arm. Military-grade probability engines crashed attempting to calculate the likelihood of such an event, their programming never designed to account for a statistical impossibility. Could this be the work of the Phyrexians? Demanded the Minister of Defense, naming a rival power that had long contested the Imperium's borders. Impossible, Admiral Klovex responded. Their technology remains 17 development cycles behind our lowest-grade communication systems. They could not penetrate our quantum-secured networks, much less neutralize the hub itself. As the Senate session dissolved into chaos, emergency reports began flooding in. Communication nodes across 6 sectors had begun failing in cascading sequence. Shipping routes were disrupted. Defense grids collapsed. Planets that had relied on Imperial oversight for millennia suddenly found themselves isolated and vulnerable. Meanwhile on Earth, in a hardened facility 2 kilometers beneath the Himalayas, Dr. Amara Chen stood before a semicircle of world leaders, the representatives, some physically present, others attending via secure quantum-encrypted channels, sat in stunned silence as she completed her presentation. The quantum entanglement disruption web we've deployed has succeeded beyond projections, she announced, her voice steady, despite having not slept in 72 hours. On the massive display behind her, a 3-dimensional map showed the solar system encased in a shimmering lattice of interconnected nodes. The alien communication structure has been completely severed from our solar system. Their observation capabilities have been neutralized. Chen gestured, and the display changed to show schematics that made several military observers inhale sharply. Propulsion systems capable of reaching Proxima Centauri in weeks, energy weapons that could target objects with pinpoint accuracy at lunar distances, defensive systems that could detect and intercept incoming objects moving at significant fractions of light speed. For 50 years, we've been patiently reverse engineering their technology while feeding their surveillance systems carefully crafted misinformation. Chen continued. The Talaxian Imperium believes we're fighting over fossil fuels while struggling to reach Mars. Meanwhile, we've built. She paused as security doors retracted, revealing a hangar containing sleek vessels that hummed with barely contained power. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen said as the assembled leaders rose from their seats in collective awe, humanity is ready to step onto the galactic stage, not as an inconsequential species, but as the reckoning they never saw coming. The American president spoke first. How long until they send someone to investigate? Within a week, Chen replied. They've already lost 3 battle fleets attempting to reach their communication hub. Their protocols dictate that they'll next check on all observed systems, including ours. And they'll find us waiting, said the Russian premier, a cold smile forming. With capabilities they never imagined we possessed. Precisely, Chen confirmed. The bait has been taken. The trap is set. When they arrive, humanity will announce itself to the galaxy, not as the primitives they've dismissed, but as the architects of their greatest technological disaster. Commander Zarek stared at the emergency order cycling on his neural display, certain there must be some mistake. Direct contact with Earth's leadership. Violation of all established first contact protocols. The message bore the highest authorization codes he'd ever seen, direct from the inner chamber of the Grand Senate itself. The Imperium requests. No, he noted, not requests. The Imperium requires immediate information regarding communications anomalies originating from Sol 3. Xerxes prepared his diplomatic shuttle with a smugness that briefly lifted his perpetual boredom. Finally, he would see the shock on these primitives' faces when they witnessed superior Talaxian technology. He'd read enough anthropological reports to know how to handle their inevitable religious panic and primitive weapon response. His cultural integration unit had loaded 62 Earth languages and prepared first contact speeches appropriate for each major government. When his shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, proximity alarms blared. 6 sleek interceptors had appeared from nowhere, surrounding his craft in perfect formation. Impossible. His sensors showed propulsion signatures utilizing principles that shouldn't have been accessible to a species that still burned hydrocarbons. Talaxian vessel came a transmission in flawless high Imperial speech, a language never broadcast to Earth. Follow our guidance trajectory precisely. Deviation will be interpreted as hostile intent. The interceptors escorted him to a landing platform that descended into the Antarctic ice. As his craft settled, Xerxes noticed something that chilled his triple-layered spine. The landing bay was perfectly designed for Talaxian vessel dimensions. They had been expecting him. Not just today, but for years. Escorted through pristine corridors by silent guards wearing powered armor more advanced than standard Imperium infantry gear, Xerxes found himself in a chamber where representatives from Earth's major powers awaited. Behind them, monitors displayed his own classified reports on humanity, the ones he'd been filing for decades. General Haruto Katsumoto of the United Earth Defense Force stood, his weathered face revealing nothing. Commander Xerxes, your personnel file indicates you've been stationed at Europa for 26 Earth years. You've classified us as, and I quote, a fractious species unlikely to achieve unity or technological relevance within observable timeframes. Screens activated around the room, showing footage that made Xerxes' breath catch. Systematic identification and neutralization of all Imperial monitoring devices throughout the solar system. Quantum disruption technology specifically calibrated to Talaxian communication frequencies, and most disturbing, a defensive perimeter extending beyond Neptune, studded with weapons platforms whose design Xerxes recognized from classified Imperium military archives. We detected your presence in 1976, explained Dr. Sharma, whom Xerxes recognized with shock as the scientist behind the energy signature he'd dismissed. While you classified us as inconsequential, we studied everything about you. You transmitted in the clear, never bothering to encrypt signals sent to such a primitive world. You kept to predictable observation patterns. You never varied your technology because you saw no need to innovate while watching inferiors. She smiled thinly. That arrogance was your first mistake. Your last was believing your own reports. A holographic display activated, showing the Talaxian Imperial hub, not destroyed, but encased in a shimmering field that pulsed with energies Xerxes couldn't identify. We haven't destroyed your communication network, Katsumoto said quietly. We've simply borrowed it. You're here because we allowed your emergency transmission to reach you. We wanted you to see exactly who you've been dismissing as inconsequential all these years. Xerxes' training finally failed him as the horrible truth dawned. The humans hadn't just cut off communications, they had been systematically isolating the Sol system while developing countermeasures in plain sight, hiding their true progress behind a carefully constructed facade of primitive behavior that Xerxes himself had certified as authentic year after year. For what purpose? He finally managed to ask. Insurance, replied Katsumoto, against the day we decided to introduce ourselves to the galaxy on our terms, not yours. You've committed an act of war against the Imperium, Xerxes said, desperation creeping into his voice. When our fleets arrive, your fleets won't find us unless we wish to be found, Dr. Sharma interrupted. The quantum barrier we've established doesn't just block communications, it selectively filters what reaches your sensors. To your detection systems, Earth now appears to be exactly what you've always believed it to be, an inconsequential world of quarreling primates. Xerex felt something unfamiliar. Fear, not for himself, but for an Imperium that had just discovered its 40 millennia of dominance, might have been built on a foundation of catastrophic arrogance. The Talaxian diplomatic vessel that entered Earth orbit 7 days later was no shuttle. The massive ship, ornate with the ceremonial markings of the Grand Senate itself, dwarfed the Europa station. Its arrival was meant to impress and intimidate. High Arbiter Meliox, the Imperium's legendary chief negotiator, had resolved 53 interspecies conflicts and negotiated the surrender of 18 planetary systems. His team of diplomatic specialists, military advisors, and Senate psychologists had never failed to secure favorable terms for the Imperium. Inconsequential species invariably become compliant when confronted with sufficient displays of technological superiority. Meliox had assured the Senate, "We will resolve this anomaly and establish proper hierarchy." The Talaxian delegation stepped into the negotiation chamber expecting to dictate terms to awestruck primitives. Instead, they found themselves seated at a circular table, a deliberate choice that eliminated positional hierarchy, facing a unified human team representing major powers, scientific communities, and defense forces. Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo, Earth's chosen spokesperson, opened with a statement that violated every principle of interspecies diplomatic protocols. "The terms of our agreement are non-negotiable." She activated a display showing the Imperium's key trading routes, defense installations, and critical infrastructure. Information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. Earth's terms shocked the Talaxian delegation. Immediate reclassification of Earth as a sovereign power outside the Imperium's hierarchy system, unrestricted access to the Imperium's technological database, and full representation in the Grand Senate. "This is beyond absurd," Meliox sputtered, his translucent skin flushing with biochemical indicators of outrage. "You cannot possibly demand Senate representation. Civilizations work for thousands of years to earn such status. The very suggestion is—" "Yet here we are," Dr. Chen interrupted, sliding a data crystal across the table. Holographic projections bloomed, showing the Imperium's communication network encased in quantum barriers that pulsed with complex energies. "Your entire infrastructure is paralyzed. We didn't just cut connections, we embedded quantum barriers that actively prevent reconnection. Only we can remove them." Meliox's cultural specialist whispered urgently in his ear, pointing out subtle details around the room. The negotiation table itself was constructed from materials only found on the Talaxian homeworld. The atmospheric mixture had been perfectly calibrated for Talaxian comfort. Even the lighting matched the spectrum of their native sun. The humans had prepared for this meeting with disturbing thoroughness. The negotiations stretched for weeks. Each morning, Meliox received increasingly desperate communications from the Senate as the Imperium's economy began collapsing without its communication infrastructure. Trade halted. Defense systems failed. 3 rival powers had already launched prodding attacks along the Imperium's suddenly vulnerable borders. On the 17th day, Meliox found Chen alone in the facility's observatory, watching distant stars through a telescope whose design incorporated Talaxian principles with uniquely human modifications. "How?" he asked simply. "Your species appeared so divided. Primitive. We have records of your broadcasts. You were killing each other over resources, ideology, territory." Chen adjusted the telescope slightly. "Your greatest mistake was confusing our diversity for weakness. You monitored our conflicts but missed how quickly we cooperate when facing external threats." She stepped aside, gesturing for him to look through the telescope. This observatory was built by 17 countries that were at war with each other 40 years ago. The scope showed not stars, but a visualization of Earth's internet, billions of connections flowing and adapting, constantly reconfiguring. While your civilization evolved toward uniformity and central control, Chen continued, ours thrived on adaptation, competition, and specialized problem-solving. You built a perfect machine with perfect vulnerabilities. We built a chaotic system designed to survive anything, including first contact with an empire that deemed us inconsequential. The next morning, Meliox signed the Treaty of Antarctica, the first agreement in Talaxian history where the Imperium stood as the petitioning party. As he pressed his genetic signature to the document, he glanced at Commander Xerex, who had been required to attend as witness to his own monumental miscalculation. Perhaps, Meliox whispered to him, we should develop a new classification category, one for species that appear inconsequential, until they aren't. The quantum barriers surrounding the Imperial communication network dissolved sector by sector as humans demonstrated good faith following the treaty signing. Chancellor Meritrix watched tensely from the Grand Senate chamber as systems reconnected, hoping their empire still existed to be saved. It did, but barely. The restored communications revealed catastrophic news. 3 neighboring stellar powers, the Phyrexian Dominion, Tulkath Hegemony, and Syraxian Convergence, had detected the Imperium's vulnerability and launched coordinated strikes across 17 border systems. Colonies that had known peace for millennia now burned. Defensive fleets, unable to coordinate, had been isolated and destroyed piecemeal. Admiral Klevex presented the grim strategic assessment to the Senate. 86% of outer defensive installations have fallen. The Phyrexians have captured 2 shipyard worlds. Our remaining forces cannot establish effective resistance without the coordination networks that were our tactical foundation for 12 millennia. As the Senate dissolved into recriminations and panic, an unexpected message arrived from Earth. We anticipated this outcome. Assistance is prepared. Coordinates follow. A delegation of Talaxian military leaders arrived at the lunar military facility with undisguised skepticism. The Imperium's military doctrine had remained essentially unchanged for millennia. Overwhelming technological superiority applied with perfect coordination. Without their networks, they had no fallback strategy. General Katsumoto led the Talaxian officers through a vast chamber where human technicians worked alongside massive holographic displays showing real-time battle data from the contested border systems. Your military relies on perfect information and centralized command, Katsumoto explained. That's why you're losing now. You've never developed alternatives because you never needed them. He gestured toward a prototype ship hanging in the center of the facility, a hybrid vessel combining Talaxian propulsion systems with human-designed modular weapon platforms and communication arrays. For 10,000 years, your fleets fought as extensions of a single controlling intelligence, Katsumoto continued. Our military history is different. We've spent millennia fighting despite communication failures, supply problems, and technological limitations. Admiral Klevex studied the strange vessel. This ship's design is inefficient. Redundant systems consume unnecessary space and resources. Exactly, Katsumoto agreed. Your civilization built perfect, efficient systems optimized for ideal conditions. But perfect systems have perfect failure points. Humans build redundancy, messiness, and multiple paths to victory. When primary systems fail, we keep fighting. Within weeks, joint human-Talaxian battle groups deployed to critical border systems, utilizing a distributed command network that allowed for both coordinated action and independent operation. The first engagement at Proxion IV shocked the invading Phyrexian fleet. Expecting to find confused, isolated Talaxian defenders, they instead encountered a hybrid force utilizing tactics their prediction engines couldn't model. Human battle doctrine, developed across thousands of years of warfare under communication constraints, proved devastatingly effective. While Talaxian ships provided technological firepower, human commanders introduced concepts alien to galactic warfare: deception operations, feigned retreats, asymmetric engagements, and distributed command structures that continued functioning even when communication was severed. The counteroffensive stabilized the Imperium's borders within months. After the decisive Battle of Keltrax Nebula, where a human-led flotilla destroyed a Tulkath fleet 3 times its size through what the Talaxians could only describe as tactical insanity, the invaders sued for peace. In the aftermath, Footage circulated throughout the Imperium of Talaxian Naval Academy instructors. Beams whose training methodologies hadn't changed in millennia, poring over human military history, Alexander's flanking maneuvers, Hannibal's crossing of the Alps, Napoleon's artillery innovations, guerrilla resistance movements, special forces operations. Commander Xerex, now serving as liaison to Earth's military command, observed Admiral Klovext studying an ancient Earth text. "What historical battle analysis has captured your interest, Admiral?" he inquired. "Not battle analysis," Klovext replied, holding up Sun Tzu's The Art of War, their philosophy of warfare. This text is over 2,000 years old, yet anticipated principles we never discovered in 40 millennia of galactic dominance. She turned a page carefully. They were preparing for this moment before they discovered fire. The arrival of Earth's diplomatic contingent on Nexus Prime, the Talaxian homeworld, created unprecedented security challenges. No inconsequential species had ever set foot on the sacred capital, let alone claimed representation in the Grand Senate. When the delegation's ship docked at the orbital platform, a crowd of thousands gathered, some protesting, others simply curious to see the beings who had humbled the Imperium. Ambassador Okonkwo led the human representatives down the ramp with practiced dignity, though sensors would have detected her elevated heart rate. The humans wore no environmental suits despite the higher gravity and different atmospheric composition. Their bodies had been subtly enhanced through genetic modifications reverse-engineered from Talaxian biology. The first Senate session with human representatives dissolved into chaos. Senior representatives from core worlds walked out in protest. The Genetic Purity Coalition threatened secession. Military representatives who had fought alongside humans defended their presence, while economic advisors warned of catastrophic market consequences if humans were alienated. Behind closed doors, powerful Talaxian interests plotted to contain this disruption to their 40 millennia power structure. The Talaxian Internal Security Directorate deployed specialized agents to monitor these temporary allies, certain that humanity would eventually reveal vulnerabilities that could be exploited. As the political drama unfolded, Dr. Yusef Rahman, Earth's newly appointed cultural ambassador, pursued a different strategy. Rather than focusing solely on the political elite, he established immersion centers throughout Nexus Prime, where ordinary Talaxians could experience human culture, cuisine, art, and ideas. The integration revealed stark differences. Talaxian civilization had evolved toward hyper-specialization and hierarchical efficiency. Individuals were genetically and cybernetically optimized for predetermined societal roles from birth. The concept of career changes or pursuing multiple interests simultaneously was alien to them. Humans, with their emphasis on individual choice and constant adaptation, appeared chaotic and inefficient. How can your scientists make discoveries when they waste time on recreational activities? Asked Nexus University's chief geneticist during a cultural exchange forum. That's precisely how we make discoveries, Rahman explained. Our greatest breakthroughs often come from cross-disciplinary thinking and apparently useless pursuits. The exchange programs grew despite institutional resistance. Talaxian society began cautiously incorporating human concepts of innovation and creative problem-solving, while humans gained access to the Imperium's vast knowledge repositories. Scientific understandings accumulated across 40 millennia of expansion. An unexpected cultural phenomenon emerged 6 months into the integration. Human entertainment, music, films, literature, games, spread through Talaxian society like wildfire, particularly among younger generations. The concept of art for emotional expression, rather than practical utility, sparked a cultural revolution. Underground clubs in Nexus Prime played Earth music. Talaxian youth adopted human fashion and slang. Efficiency deviation became a popular movement among students who deliberately incorporated randomness and creativity into their specialized training regimens, to the horror of their instructors. Commander Xerex, now serving as military liaison, found Rahman at an observation platform overlooking the capital's central district, where a massive crowd gathered for Earth's first officially sanctioned concert on Nexus Prime. "Your culture is destabilizing," Xerxes observed, watching young Talaxians dancing to rhythms that contradicted the mathematical precision governing their society. The Ministry of Social Harmony has registered a 42% increase in efficiency deviations. The Genetic Council is concerned. "Yet you're here, watching," Rahman noted, "not filing a report." Xerxes hesitated, his expression unreadable. "We classified your art and cultural expressions as primitive emotional indulgences," he finally admitted. "Yet I find myself moved by your music in ways I cannot quantify through established parameters. Perhaps being deemed inconsequential was our greatest advantage," Rahman replied as the music swelled. "You evolved toward perfect efficiency while we remained gloriously, powerfully inefficient. You optimized your civilization for a predictable universe. We built ours to thrive in chaos." Below them, thousands of Talaxians experienced something their society had engineered out of existence millennia ago: the simple joy of unpredictable connection. 3 years into the Human-Talaxian Alliance, celebration preparations for the upcoming Harmony Festival halted as every communication device across Nexus Prime simultaneously broadcast the same emergency signal. In the Grand Senate chamber, a holographic projection materialized, a massive vessel of unknown configuration emerging from the darkness beyond the galactic rim. "Attention, subjects of the fallen Imperium," came a voice that caused elder Talaxians to tremble in recognition. "The dormancy ends. The reclamation begins." The Voidborn had returned. Ancient historical records, previously classified at the highest levels, were hurriedly declassified. The Voidborn, a spacefaring species who had nearly conquered the Imperium 12,000 years ago before mysteriously disappearing into intergalactic space, had been dismissed as legend by most modern Talaxians. They were terrifyingly real. Within days, the Voidborn targeted the newly reconstructed communication hubs with devastating precision, suggesting they had been monitoring galactic events from dark space. Their massive World Ripper vessels appeared above 6 outer Talaxian colonies simultaneously. Billions died as planetary crusts were systematically peeled away, the material harvested for unknown purposes. Emergency sessions of the Grand Senate dissolved into chaos. Military commanders presented simulation after simulation, each showing the same outcome: total defeat within 60 days. Voidborn technology far surpassed even the combined knowledge of humans and Talaxians. Their vessels phased through conventional defenses, their weapons ignored shielding frequencies, and their propulsion systems allowed them to appear anywhere without warning. "Evacuation is our only option," Grand Admiral Telmorax declared, projections showing refugee corridors to the galactic core. "We must abandon the outer systems and consolidate our remaining forces." Dr. Chen, attending as Earth's scientific advisor, requested permission to address the Senate. The Talaxian leadership, desperate for any alternative, granted her unprecedented speaking privileges. "Humanity has faced extinction-level threats throughout our history," she began. "Not from superior species, but from our own limitations: plagues, climate shifts, resource depletion. What saved us wasn't technological superiority, but adaptability." She activated a holographic display showing the quantum technologies humans had used to disrupt the Imperial network. "We analyzed Voidborn weapon signatures from the attacked colonies. Their technology utilizes quantum principles similar to what we developed, but at scales we barely comprehend." The room fell silent as understanding dawned. Chen continued, "If we can't defeat their technology through conventional means, we'll turn it against them. Every system has fundamental constants that must remain, well, constant for the system to function." Human-led scientific teams worked around the clock, analyzing debris from destroyed Voidborn vessels. They discovered a crucial vulnerability. Voidborn weapons and propulsion systems relied on precise mathematical constants to maintain quantum coherence across vast distances. If those constants could be altered within localized space, their entire technological framework would collapse. The plan requires deploying thousands of small, stealthed quantum disruptors throughout contested space, Chen explained to the skeptical Talaxian High Command. Each device will create a bubble where the fundamental constants shift unpredictably. Impossible, objected Fleet Strategist Sorlax. Such a distributed, uncoordinated strategy contradicts all established military doctrine. How would Central Command control such chaos? They wouldn't, General Katsumoto replied. That's precisely the point. The Voidborn, like you, rely on predictability and centralized control. This plan depends on deliberate chaos, something humans excel at creating. The Talaxian military hierarchy initially rejected the plan as too disorganized and unpredictable. But as 3 more colony worlds fell, desperation overrode tradition. Earth's nations had each contributed their best scientific and military minds, working in parallel on different aspects of the problem. A chaotic, redundant approach that would have horrified Talaxian efficiency experts, but resulted in breakthroughs no single approach could have developed. As the first quantum disruptors were deployed by stealth ships into Voidborn territory, Admiral Klovex observed to Xerex, "We may be witnessing the end of our civilization, or the birth of something entirely new." The combined human-Talaxian forces executed Operation Quantum Flux, the largest coordinated military action in the history of the galaxy. Millions of quantum disruptors were deployed by stealth craft into Voidborn-controlled territories, each programmed to activate simultaneously across 17 sectors. The Voidborn Supreme Vessel, a construct larger than Earth's moon, had just positioned itself to destroy the Talaxian homeworld when the operation commenced. When the disruptors activated, they created localized fields where the fundamental constants governing Voidborn technology shifted unpredictably. Their fearsome weapons turned inward, shields collapsed, and their instantaneous communication network dissolved into quantum static. Talaxian battle groups, each led by human tactical commanders, pushed forward into suddenly vulnerable Voidborn territory. The counterattack drove the invaders back to their staging areas within weeks. What the Talaxians had calculated as a hopeless last stand became an unprecedented victory against an enemy they had feared for 12 millennia. In the aftermath, the Talaxian Grand Senate convened a historic session in the ancient Convocation Hall, a chamber unused for 10,000 years, reserved for only the most momentous occasions in Imperial history. High Chancellor Velix addressed representatives from all worlds of the Imperium, human diplomats given places of honor at the center. For 40 millennia, Velix began, his voice carrying throughout the vast chamber. The Imperium has classified civilizations based on technological advancement, resource availability, and strategic value. This system failed to recognize the true potential of humanity, not in their technology, but in their adaptability, creativity, and diversity of thought. The classification system that had deemed Earth inconsequential was formally abolished. In its place emerged a new framework, one that valued cultural contribution, problem-solving approaches, and unique evolutionary perspectives. The Senate unanimously approved the creation of the Galactic Cooperative, replacing the hierarchical Imperium with a more fluid organization that incorporated elements of human governance alongside Talaxian traditions. Species previously dismissed or subjugated were invited to join as equals. Commander Xerex, now promoted to diplomatic overseer for the Sol sector, returned to the station orbiting Europa that had once been his prison assignment. The facility, once used to monitor primitive humans, had been transformed into the galaxy's most prestigious diplomatic academy, where future representatives from hundreds of worlds came to study humanity's remarkable journey. As his shuttle approached, Xerex reflected on the changes a single inconsequential species had brought to a stagnant empire. The Imperium's desperate plea for help had become a genuine partnership, then a transformation that had saved them all. Through the viewport, Earth rose above Europa's icy horizon, the blue planet that had changed everything. Xerex recalled the first report he had filed about this world, 40 years earlier. Sol 3 exhibits no indicators of significance. Recommend minimal observation resources. How spectacularly wrong he had been. There was no such thing as an inconsequential species, only inconsequential perspectives. Below him, the Diplomatic Academy's first graduating class assembled. Among them were Talaxians, humans, and representatives from 12 other species, the first generation of a new galactic order. Earth was officially classified with a designation never before used in Imperial history, consequential beyond measure. As his shuttle docked, Xerex received a message from Admiral Klovex, now overseeing the Joint Fleet protecting former Voidborn territory. The message contained a single quote from one of the human texts she had been studying, words written by a human philosopher thousands of years before they reached the stars. The true measure of a civilization is not found in its monuments or technologies, but in how it treats those it deems inconsequential.